Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's SANS webcast, SANS Introduction to Python course. My name is Debbie Gruy with the SANS Institute, and I'll be moderating today's webcast. Our featured speaker today is Mark Baggett, SANS expert and instructor. If during the webcast you have any questions for Mark, please enter them into the questions window located on the GoToWebinar interface. We'll be answering them during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Please note the podcast is being recorded, and this recording will be available for viewing later today and can be found on the SANS registration page. And with that, I'd like to hand the webcast over to Mark.
All right. Thank you, Debbie. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mark Baggett, and I am broadcasting today from beautiful Augusta, Georgia. Thanks for joining me on a Thursday afternoon. What is today? August 8th. We're going to be talking about SEC573 and just some of the options that are available for delivery of that class. Today we have a couple of new options that are being presented for just a limited time, and so we wanted to take a couple minutes to explain the difference between these two, just to answer a lot of the questions that we've been getting about it. So first, a little bit about myself. My name is Mark Baggett. I am a penetration tester and incident response, do incident response and consulting through various means. I got my own company. I also do Surge Team and work with a couple of other companies in doing incident response work for organizations. I'm a senior instructor for SANS, the author of SEC573. I also got my master's, GSE, and got several years of commercial experience, including being a chief information security officer and a developer, and long career behind me. This last line here is my vanity search. So most people use Google for their vanity search. I like to grep through the Metasploit source code searching for my own name as a vanity search. As it is today, 7 times I'll appear in Metasploit source code, even though I haven't actually written a module for Metasploit. This is all based upon tools, techniques that I've researched to come up with, and other people have written modules for and then given me credit for very kindly in the framework. So today I want to talk about 573 and some delivery options. First, talk a little bit about Python 2 versus Python 3, which is a very common question we get. And then what's the difference between this 573 and this new workshop that we've got going on. And then last, talk about which one you really want to attend depending upon your skill level. So really, this is the bulk of the question here. We've got 573, which is our Automating Information Security with Python course. This is very popular course among SANS, one of the most top 20 most popular classes we have. It's run very frequently as a SANS course, and you can see over here on the right side of the page, we've got classes coming up in Prague, Virginia Beach, in Las Vegas this September. We've got London in September. We got Pentest Hackfest coming up. We also have it at CDI this year. So several more opportunities to take it again in 2019. But we also have this 2-day special that we're going to be running. These classes are only going to run at the 2 events that you see here at BSidesAugusta on October 2nd and 3rd. And at the Wild West Hacking Fest on October 22nd and 23rd. Those are the only 2 times that we'll ever run this 2-day special, Essentials of Automation with Python. And so then the question that we get asked is, well, what's the difference between these two? Why would I be interested in taking the 2-day class versus taking the 6-day version of the course? And what's the overlap and things like that? So let's dig into that a little bit and talk about what's in the courses and how these 2 courses relate to each other. So essentially, 573 has a 2-day workshop at the beginning of it. So it's a 6-day class, and there's 2 days at the beginning where we start from the very bare bones, assuming you know nothing about Python, nothing about coding. We're going to start with what is a variable and how do I code? What is an if then else statement, right? What is a function? How do modules work? Everything that you need to know, assuming absolutely nothing. There is no prerequisite I could tell you that you have to have for this. There's nothing that you really have to know coming into this class. Now, after we covered the essentials, then we go into 3 days of practical application of those things. We're going to talk about various subjects matters, and we're going to do them with themes, right? We have a defensive theme, a forensics theme, and an offensive theme. But as you'll see in the next couple of slides, the things that we cover in those next 3 days are really applicable skills that everyone needs, regardless of whether you're defense, forensics, or offense. We just wrap them up into a project or a theme for the day as we look at the practical application of these different things. And then day 6 is a capture the flag event. Now, if you're already an expert coder, if you already know some Python when you come into the code, or you already know how to code in some other language, then when you hear me say that there's a 2 days of essentials workshop up front, then, well, you probably are a little disappointed in the prospect of attending this class, because 2 full days of level setting is a tremendous amount of level setting. It's more than really just about any class has, but it's really a necessary thing to go through with 573. Learning to program, you are learning a brand new programming language, so we have to have those essentials up there. But if you already know coding, then 2 days is a long time to spend on the essentials. So the course is a self-paced course. The way that it works is I'll introduce all the concepts to you up front and then turn you loose and let you work through some of the material on your own. Let's just get into these days and what's in them a little bit more detail, and then I'll show you how we break down the self-paced course. So in the 2-day boot camp, the first 2 days of the class, which incidentally is also the same 2 days that we give you in the essentials workshop. So the 2 specials are 2 days of just the boot camp classes. So this is what you're going to get if you're in the first 2 days of 573, or you're attending the special event at BSidesAugusta and Wild West Hackfest. You're going to get an introduction to the language. We're going to talk about what variables are, the different types of variables that you have, strings, byte arrays. We're going to talk about building functions, if then else statements, how to create modules, how to interact with lists and tuples and dictionaries. We'll talk about some specialized dictionaries that are very useful to us as security professionals in Python, or in some specialized dictionaries that are useful to us as security professionals. And then we get into how to debug code and the differences between Python 2 and 3 in our boot camps. Then from there, we go into our defensive, each of our themed days. Day 3 is our defensive themed day. And in our defensively themed day, we talk about how to read and write from files, or write files on the hard drive. You can imagine, if you are defense or offense or forensics, certainly there's a need for everybody to be able to read and write files to the file system. So you'll see throughout each of these days, there's applications of programming that are useful to all of the different disciplines. We just give you a theme for each of the days. So our theme for day 3 is we're a defender. We want to talk about reading log files off of a system, doing analysis of those, being able to go through the log files, pull out useful pieces of information such as IP addresses, user agent strings, host names, and then doing some analysis on those with using regular expressions to pull out those pieces of information, and then using different analysis techniques like geolocation lookups, adding third-party open source intelligence sources to supplement the data that we've pulled out of the log files to make good judgments as to whether or not this is an attack, related to an attack, or something that we can ignore. And then we take those same things and we apply those to packet analysis. So using Scapy, we can open up PCAP files, we can extract all the payloads from those packets, turning them into large text files. Basically, we're in Scapy, how do we do that awesome feature in Wireshark, which is to right click and say follow streams, reassemble the streams into one big string of text, and then once again go back and apply those regular expressions and log analysis techniques to those same skills. Okay. On our forensics day, what we do is we talk about carving binary structures, whether it's in memory, whether it's a blob that's being transmitted across a network in a command and control channel by attackers. How do we carve up binary structures that either we have a clear map of an understanding of what is in that data, or when we don't, when we're doing some research into command and control channels and things like that. This day 3, the beginning of it, takes the form of writing TCP dump. So what we do is we start with opening up raw sockets and being able to read raw sockets, and then parsing out the different pieces of the IP header and the TCP header, and parsing that out so that we can then extract the payloads and print that information. We then turn our focus to developing a tool for forensics analysts. So the scenario we have is you are a forensics analyst, you've been given a laptop, and you want to know everywhere that laptop has been traveled. So has traveled to. So we'll talk about interfacing with databases, connecting to various types of databases and reading information out of them, such as SQL databases, Windows registry, and other types of databases. And then once we can go into that information, we're going to use the Windows registry to pull out the access points that the wireless access points that this particular laptop is connected to from their history. And then we'll use web request modules to interface with online websites, to log into various APIs, and to download location information associated with those access points, so we can track the physical location of that laptop and where it's been traveling to. And that's our forensics day. On day 5, we talk about socket-based communications, right? How do I establish a TCP or UDP server and communicate across a network? In addition to TCP, UDP, we talk about how to gracefully handle errors, how to execute code inside of a Python program. So launch a command prompt and interact with that command prompt, or launch a bash shell on a Linux system, interact with other commands, capture the output of those commands, and use Python as an automation tool to launch various tasks and get things done. We'll talk about some of the nuances of that, such as blocking and non-blocking sockets, and then we wrap it up with a discussion of object-oriented coding. Now, with all of that, the biggest challenge for any programming class is the diverse skill set of people that are going to come to the class, right? You're going to have veteran coders, you're going to have non-programmers that come to the class, and you're going to have people who know how to code, but they know how to program in other languages, right? They're new to Python, but they're there to learn how to apply those concepts that they already know in other languages to the Python programming language in information security. So that is one significant challenge. You know, another challenge that you've got with programming classes is probably best illustrated by the book, The Mythical Man Month by Frederick Brooks. What he did is he studied professional programmers, and he discovered that the professional coder develops about 10 lines of code a day. And so if we're going to put together a programming class that we're going to have you write TCP dump in the morning of day 3, well, then 10 lines of code a day would be a significant challenge. And then the last problem is that you've got to have a ton of hands-on for people to learn how to code. And that's one of the things I'm really proud of with this course, is the amount of hands-on exercises and labs that there are in this course. As a matter of fact, as a self-paced class, we often have students that will come in there and spend close to 90% of the entire class doing nothing but hands-on coding in the course. So how do we pull that off? Let's talk about that. So the way that we handle that is we have lots of lab times, long lab times. If it's a 10 line of code, many of our labs are fill in the blank, where I'll give you 200 lines of code, and you'll have to write 2 or 3 of those lines before finishing up. And then the last thing is, well, we've got pyWars, which is our self-paced learning environment. Okay. So early on in the class, I will start up a pyWars server. And actually, before we go into this, let me show you what pyWars looks like. So here's a Python prompt, and let's see if I make this font a little bit bigger for you here. I'm going to terminal appearances, and let's just make this a little bit bigger. All right. So here I've got a Python and I've imported pyWars here, created a pyWars exercise, and I've just logged in with a generic account here. Now, if I'm, and this is done very early in the class. So in the morning of day one, we'll talk a little bit about the setup of the class and how things are going to work, and then I will introduce you to the pyWars and turn you loose in the labs. The way the pyWars works is you have a pyWars client. In this case, I've stored my pyWars client in the variable D, short for demo in my brain. But inside the variable D, I've got a couple of methods that I can use to interact with the server. The first one is question. I can ask the pyWars server for a question. Now, the question variable, d.question, that variable contains code. And if anytime you want to run code that's stored in a variable in Python, you put an open parentheses and close parentheses after it. In this case, d.question is called a method. It's a piece of code that's attached to a variable. So I'm going to call the question method, and I'm going to tell it I would like for you to give me question 0. So when I press enter here, the pyWars client stored in variable D goes across the network, and it says to my pyWars server, which is actually another VM that I've got running back over here. This is my pyWars server. It says to my pyWars server, hey, pyWars server, I'd like to know what question 0 is. And then the pyWars server responds back and says, sure, question 0 is to simply return the string returned when you call data 0 as the answer. All right. So in order to answer any pyWars question, you have to know what the question is. You have to also know what the data looks like. So here I'm going to take a look at data for question 0. And it says the data for question 0 is to submit the string, submit me. So in order to answer this, you might try and do something like this. D.answer to question 0 is answer takes 2 arguments, where question takes 1 argument and data takes 1 argument. Answer takes 2 arguments. It takes your question number and your answer. And so I might try and do that, but it tells me that I timed out. So you've only got 2 seconds between the time you ask for the data and the time you submit the answer, because I want you to automatically calculate how to solve these problems and then submit your answers. So another way I could do this is I could do d.date answer to number 0 is d.data 0. Now, when I press enter here, this doesn't send the string d.data 0 to the server. Instead, what it does is it runs on my computer, it runs d.data 0. d.data 0 on my computer goes off to the server and says, hey, can I have the data associated with question 0? And the server says, sure. And it responds back and gives it the word submit me. And then this word here will be replaced with the word submit me. So that essentially in 1 second did exactly what I wanted to do here, but in 1 step. Okay, did here and here in 1 step. All right, so that's question 0. Question 1, d.question 1, asks me to submit the sum of data plus 1. So if I do this, d.data 1, I can see that d.data 1 contains 41. So I might think, all right, I'll do d.answer to number 1 is 41 plus 5, 46. And if I was really fast, I might get that, but in fact, there's no way to be fast enough because, well, the data changes every single time. So the data is constantly changing. So what you have to do is you have to process the data as part of your answer. So here the answer to this one is d.data 1 plus 5. This goes off to the server and then it asks for the data. The data is given back to it as an answer. It'll add 5 to it and then submit that as the answer. And I can see that I got that one correct. Okay. There's also a scoreboard, so I can print my score, print d.score for me, show me exactly what I've got. And it sees that I've answered question 0, 1, and I've also done 17 and 60 here in the past. So that's a kind of an idea for pyWars. So very on in the course, I'll turn you loose on pyWars and let you begin to work through the challenges at your own pace. And you can listen to lecture when it's a piece of material that's new to you. And you can if you already know the concepts that I've talked about, then you can just work through the labs on your own at your own pace. Now, what typically happens when somebody comes to the class, the experience changes, and what you get out of the class changes dramatically, whether you're a brand new coder or somebody who already knows how to code in Python or somebody who already knows how to code in some other language, and you're just adapting your skills to Python. So if you're brand new to coding and you've never coded before, typically in the 6-day class, what would happen is you'd come in, and on day 1, right, we have several labs that we work on. So lab 0, then we go to the first lab of the day. We have 2 labs that are part of that, and then there's 5 labs that are part of our next lab that's in the morning, and then lab 2, and there's other labs that are also not part of the pyWars server that are done outside of pyWars. And for each of those labs, people who are new to coding will typically finish about 33 to 55% or 50% of the labs during the time it's given in class. Right? So if you're brand new to coding, you won't finish all of the labs in class, but each of the labs are broken down into very small consumable chunks, and you just work through as many of them as you can in the time given. Now, everybody takes home all of the labs with them when they leave. So if at the end of day 1, your score looks like this, where you finished challenges 0, 1, and 2, but you left challenges 4, 5, and 6, and 10, 11 done or undone at the end of day 1, you've got all of the labs in your VM. You can go back to your room and complete them. You could save them until you get back to work and work through them offline. Okay. Now, what's interesting about the 2-day class is in the 2-day class, right, this is the 2-day special is going to include all of the labs days 1 through 6, because, well, I need to enable that self-paced learning portion of the course. So if you come to the 2-day class, we'll be together for 2 days, but you'll still have access to all 6 days and beyond of course material while you're there in the classroom. And when you leave the class, you'll still take home the labs that are associated, the pyWars labs that are associated with days 0 through day 5. Okay. So you will get to continue to work through that material offline after the course has ended. And if you've already know how to code when you come to the class, well, typically what happens is people who know how to code when they come to the class, they usually have finished all of day 1's labs day 1 and 2's labs by the end of day 1. And they're starting to work on day 3's material and days 4 material and so forth. Now, even the veteran coder who knew Python when they showed up in the course, no one finishes all of the labs when they come to the class. Some people will finish all of the pyWars labs when they come to the class, but in order to complete all of the pyWars labs, they've had to ignore some of the built-in labs that are part of the course that are not in pyWars. There are additional things, for example, writing TCP dump or writing an application that interfaces with online web APIs and things like that. Those aren't in pyWars, but they are still labs that people have had to ignore in order to get through this. Matter of fact, all of day 5 isn't in pyWars, and people who finish all the pyWars labs, well, they have to usually sacrifice that. But once again, you get to take everything home with you and continue to work through the material offline. Now, for those people who do finish all of the labs that are in pyWars, well, there's a special CTF bonus for them. So if anybody finishes all those CTF challenges that are part of pyWars, then I do award the first person to do that a CTF coin, and I put them into the pyWars Server Hall of Fame. The pyWars Server Hall of Fame is another set of pyWars questions that are created by people who finished all the pyWars labs. So in addition to taking home all of the labs associated with the course in both the 2-day and 5-day course, you do get to take home questions that are created by people who finished all the pyWars challenges, the Hall of Fame challenge. And all those questions bear the name of the brilliant person who was able to finish all of the pyWars challenges during the 1 week of class. But it is a very rare occasion that someone completes all of those pyWars challenges. For the majority of people, what happens when they come to the 6-day class is that, well, they listen to most of the lecture and they will work through labs. And during the labs, they'll get through, I don't know, 70% of the labs during the labs time that they have, and just have a few that are left over. And then they'll usually pick those up at night to stay on track. But it's intended to, when my intention is that at the end of the course that everyone will have unfinished labs, that I wanted to give you more course material than you can do in a 6-day class, and this is certainly more course material than you can do in a 2-day class. So whether you come to the 6-day class or the 2-day class, I'm going to give you all of these labs to take home with you so that you can continue to work through these things on your own pace. Okay. So one of the questions I commonly get is, well, is this Python 2 or is it Python 3? And the answer is, well, it's Python 3, but here's the thing. So Python 2 has an end of life in 2020. Okay, so that's right around the corner. Python 2 is no longer going to be receiving updates or features from the Python consortium. But as of today, PEP 394 is Python's standard document that says what happens on a Linux system when you type Python. And as of today, that still says it's supposed to launch Python 2. So the default interpreter on all Linux systems is supposed to be Python 2. Now I know that there's some Linux distributions, including a very popular one that has already jumped the gun on this and has gone against the PEP consortium's standard and made it Python 3. But today on most systems, you're going to find that it launches Python 2. So the way that Python 573 has been working with this over the last 3 years, we've been teaching that you're to write Python 3 code, that code that's going to work in Python 3. But here's the problem is if I just write code that works in Python 3 and I'm using this for incident response, right, or forensics, it's certainly not an option for me to go to a system that only has the Python 2 interpreter on it and run my code on there, and then my program doesn't work, and I have to say, all right, you have to install Python 3 for me on this machine before I can capture a forensics image. That just doesn't work, right? So our approach has been that we're writing Python 3 code that is backwards compatible to Python 2. So every program that we write in 573 will work in Python 3, and it'll also work in Python 2. Now, in doing that, right, there's a couple of tweaks that you have to make to your code. Mostly it involves using from the future module. There's a module called future that upgrades Python 2 functionality so that it's compatible with Python 3. And we talk about the interoperability issues between Python 2 and Python 3 and the things that we need to look for in writing the code so that it can work in Python 3 and in Python 2. In Python 573 up until now, we have talked about many of the great features that are in Python 3, such as f-strings, but we have not used them, right? So we'll teach you this is available in Python 3, but my recommendation is not to use that if I need to write programs that are going to work in both Python 2 and Python 3. Now, as of 2020, right, that's going to change. As of 2020, when PEP 394 changes and Python 3 becomes the default interpreter on our Linux systems, well, then I'm going to start adding the use of those Python F strings and other things into the code that we write in 573. Right, so we'll begin to use those features that up until 2020 we've only been discussing. And we're going to leave behind those systems because as of 2020, once PEP 394 changes, we can expect we're going to see Python 3 as the default interpreter on all of our systems that we have in our environments. Okay. Now, so that is one change that'll be happening in 2020 between 573, and it's the same learning concepts, the same interoperability is discussed. But the way we discuss them changes a little bit in that until 2020, I'm still recommending that here are these features that could be used, but I recommend not using them until that interpreter becomes there. And then you'll see that the coding samples and things like that in 573 will begin to incorporate some of those F strings and things like that after 2020. Okay. So I think that if you are a Python 2 coder, right, and you are interested in really learning what does it take to upgrade your skills from Python 2 to Python 3, I think that this 2-day workshop is really ideal for that target audience. And that's one of the few people that, or that's one of the main people that we are thinking will want to come to this 2-day workshop that we're running at Wild West Hack Fest and BSidesAugusta, right? So what we talk about in this thing is really all of the things that the 2 to 3 does not automatically fix for you. And I, when I posted or tweeted that we were going to be talking about, hey, come sit in the seminar and we'll talk about the class and we'll talk about how we're going to teach you to upgrade from Python 2 to Python 3. I got a couple of comments back that suggested it's as easy as open parentheses, close parentheses at the end of your print statements. But in fact, it is much more complex than that, right? That granted is a significant change that you have to make in your code, but there's many other changes that we need. Most of the interoperability problems you're going to come up with are as a result of the fact that in Python 3, you now have UTF-8 as the default storage mechanism for your strings, and functionality is moved out of built-ins, and there's changes in the way that division works and import and sort, list comprehension. Many of the built-in constructs that we've come to use over the years have changed in Python 2, and I'm going to teach you how to fix all of those things when you upgrade to Python 3. Just to give you a quick example of one of those, right? So in Python 2, there was no such thing as bytes, right? Or they added backwards compatibility of bytes, but bytes were still just strings in Python 2. So there was nothing that required that you give it bytes as input, and there was nothing that returned bytes. So in Python 2.7, as you can see over here on the left, right, I could call codex.encode and tell it to base 64 encode this. This would not work in Python 3. In Python 3, I have to put a little b outside these strings to say this is a byte string that I want to encode. Likewise, codex.decode, if I tried to decode hex, in Python 2, it returned a string, but in Python 3, functions now return bytes back to us that used to return strings in Python 2. What that means is if I write code like this, if infocon is read is in the results of request.get.isc.sans.org, then print runaway, runaway, runaway. So this is going to go out to the SANS Internet Storm Center. It's going to get the contents of that page, and it's going to look for infocon read in the content of that page and say if the content contains infocon read or is equal to infocon read, then print runaway, runaway, runaway. Now, this code, if it ever did work in Python 2, right, then it would not work in Python 3 because content now, where in Python 2 it used to return a string, and it would possibly match on this string in Python 2. In Python 3, content now returns a byte string, and so this would never work in Python 3 because it's a byte string is never going to be equal to a normal string. And so being able to identify issues like this, and you can see that this is just one of many of the issues that we talk about in the code, in the course, is what we're going to teach you in there. So we're going to teach you the differences between Python 2 and Python 3, the things to look out for, and how to upgrade your existing code base from Python 2 to Python 3 so that you're ready for the 2020 switchover. Also, if you're new to coding, right, then the 2-day workshop is really for you, right? If you're brand new to coding, then that's all this is doing, is teaching that 2-day workshop. The class is 100% focused on the essentials of coding in Python. All right, you'll take the additional coding material home with you for days 3 through 5 at no additional cost. So you could come into the class, you could work through days 1 and 2, mastering those subjects, getting to the point where your Python skills are built up to the point where you are now an experienced Python coder. and then you can continue to work through the material for days 3, 4, and 5, and 6. And if you decide at that point, I really wish I could go to the entire course and see the lecture and understand days 3 through 5 in depth and have the interaction with the instructor and ask those questions. Well, if you decide you want to go back and get the entire course, the entire 6-day course, then SANS provides a special alumni pricing, right? Where you can contact them and you say, hey, I took the 2-day version of 573. I want to take the 6-day 573. And they will allow you to register for that at a discounted price. The discounted price, right? They do not allow me to commit SANS to a price, but I can tell you that the last people I talked to on that price, and it's not a published pricing discount as well, but the last people I talked to when we did this said that it was as though the first 2 days were free. Okay, so they basically took the 2-day class, worked up their skills, built their skills up to the point where they could then come and sit through the 6-day class as an experienced coder and get more out of the advanced material as they went through that. Okay, and once again, what SANS alumni pricing is subject to change, but that's the experience that was shared with me by people who have done this in the past. Okay. So if you decide to take the entire 6-day class, it's really a very low risk to go back and take the additional class. So that's that's a great way to approach this if you just really want to build your skills up from nothing. Now, if you already know how to code in Python, I would say that the 2-day workshop is probably not for you, right? It's not intended for you for just the 2-day workshop, unless you really want to take advantage of the whole self-paced nature of the class and the fact that you get all 6 days of the labs and you want to work through those on your own. If you're looking at a way of taking getting all 6 days of material and being able to, or of lab material, and being able to work through that at the 2-day price, and that's a possibility. But the lecture is focused on just the essentials of coding. So here I got kind of a chart that breaks down, really what to expect from the 2 different classes, right? In both the 6-day class and the 2-day class, you'll get access to all of the class labs, all the pyWars labs, and the bonus CTF material, right? There's actually close to 90 pyWars challenges that you'll have access to during the 2 or 6 days of class, right? And then you will take home with you in both the 2 and the 6-day class the first 5 days of pyWars labs. So those will be taken home with you, and you'll take home printed material and the printed lecture and the solutions for the first 2 days of material with you in both the 6-day and the 2-day class. Both the 6 and the 2-day class are eligible for alumni pricing, that they could retake the class when it gets updated to new content. It's both the 2-day and the 6-day class are there so that you can learn the essentials of coding and have self-paced training that's recommended for beginners. We're going to teach you updating your skills for both from Python 2 to Python 3 in both versions. Now, what you don't get in the 2-day class that you do get in the 6-day class is the practical application of those skills beyond the building of the skill set. So we're going to teach you the essentials of coding and how to code in Python, but not those practical application skills. So we don't go through the themes of here's how to build codes as a forensics person, or here's how to build programs as a defensive person, the offensive person. There's also a capture the flag that's part of the 16, so a capstone event where we team up and we solve programming challenges and win coins on day 6. There's no capstone or CTF as part of the 2-day essential workshop. Also in the 2-day workshop, you don't get access to the printed materials and the solutions for the pyWars challenges for days 3 through 5. You have the questions and you can still submit answers, and the server will tell you yes or no, the answer is incorrect or the answer is correct, but you don't get my printed solutions of how I solve the problems for the material for days 3 through 5. Of course, if you attend the full 6-day class, you get MP3 recordings of the entire thing. Those are not available for the 2-day class. And really, if you're looking to take the GPYC, then I'd say the 6-day class is going to give you everything that you need in order to prepare for that. I would say the 2-day class really doesn't. And if you're interested in free pizza with pineapple toppings, then I'm not going to have that at either the 6-day class or the 2-day essentials. I'm sorry, we have to draw a hard line on the pepperoni or the pineapple topping pizzas at the conferences. So that's really the differences between the two courses, and I hope that answers your questions. But if not, if there are additional questions that you have, things that I can help you out with, then I'm happy to answer those questions now.
Well, thank you, Mark, for that great presentation. And we do have a couple of questions here to lead us into our Q&A session. One is kind of long. I have reached a point in my scripting where I really need to make a jump to decision and logical programming. How can I get into the mindset of object-oriented coding and threading to accomplish the task faster?
Yeah, so you want to make the jump from procedural coding into object-oriented coding. I would say 573 is an essentials course. I would say we do teach the essentials of object-oriented coding in 573. It is a last day topic. It is day 5 material where we will talk about the inheritance of objects and how to modify their properties, how to properly initialize an object and to override existing functionality or supplement that. So we'll just barely touch on the surface of that, but the majority of the code, or all the code except for that last project in 573, is a procedural program course. Now, the way that you do that is you pick a project and you just start applying those concepts and developing that code from there. So I feel like at the end of 573, we would lay a solid foundation of object-oriented coding for you. But if you're looking for how do I develop, you want to code object-oriented coding, then that's the last thing we talk about in 573.
Great, thank you. Our next question is a two-parter. Part one, will the candidates be allowed to take away any tools developed in Python, for example, codes that are used in class to complete the labs?
Yeah, so you will take with you a virtual machine that contains the labs that are part of the course. All right, so you take home printed books. If you're doing the 6-day class, you take home the books with the solutions to all the labs that are part of the class. If you're in the 2-day course, you take home books with the printed solution for the first 2 days of material. And the ability to continue to complete those labs offline at home.
Okay, great. And the second part is, out of 10, what skill level will the candidate new to the programming world, would have approximately after the course?
The candidate will have approximately +3 of whatever they came in with, right? So it is a self-paced class, and of course, +3 is very subjective, right? It is a self-paced class, right? So people who come in who are brand new to coding arguably get the most out of it, right? Because you come in at 0, you leave at a 4 or a 5, right? People who come in at a 4 or 5 leave at a 6. As a self-paced class, the course is designed to meet you where you are and to advance your skills. My hope is that everyone who comes in, regardless of their skill set, when they leave there, they can read through Python code, they can understand what Python, given a Python program that is broken, look through it, find errors, fix it, and begin to use that in their work environment. But yeah, if you come in with more experience, then you will, I'll advance your skills from there through the self-paced learning of the class.
Okay, great. We do have another question. The caller says, I took the last version of SEC573 and he may have come in a little late. How much has changed? I see that we will learn how to move from Python 2 to Python 3.
Yeah, so 573 is constantly evolving. At 5 years ago, it taught Python 2. Then about 5 years ago, we made the switch from where it's been for the last several years. It's been teaching how to write programs that work in both Python 2 and Python 3. And in 2020, we will teach how to write code that works exclusively in Python 3, but we will identify those features that will break your code in Python if somebody runs it in Python 2, and talk about ways to mitigate that. So it's largely going to be the same content, right? For the last several years, we've been teaching Python 3 and how to write code that works in Python 3, but when it comes to features that don't work in Python 2, we've talked about them and then said, well, we can't use it, it'll break it. After 2020, I'll change that to say, we can use this, just keep in mind it's going to break it.
Great, thank you. Yep. And that does take us to the end of our questions. So thank you so much, Mark, for your great presentation. And to our audience, we greatly appreciate your listening in. For a schedule of all upcoming and archived SANS webcasts, including this one, please visit sans.org/webcasts. Quick note, you can find your CEUs for all completed webcasts, including this one, by logging into your SANS portal account. Navigate to your account dashboard, then click My Webcasts. You can then download your CEU on the right-hand side of the webpage. Until next time, take care, and we hope to have you back again for the next SANS webcast. Thank you.
Thanks.